Alrighty, guys, we are back live. I need to get this over to you all. Let's see. Okay, one person's back. Thank you, guys. I'm not sure if everyone else knows how to get back in the live chat. So please, hopefully you can go back to YouTube. All right, awesome. Cool. All right, guys, we got two people back. Welcome back, everybody. So sorry, is this audio better? Okay, wonderful. I love to hear that. Okay, so yeah, it turned out that one of my microphones was off. I had my podcast mic on, and they didn't have the webcam on in particular. So here we go. I'm just gonna go ahead and start from the top. Long story short, guys, we have so much more free time with our dogs based on we are confined over to our house, just like me and Dynamite. And what ends up happening is two things might happen, right? Our dogs are definitely going to love a lot of this extended free face time that they have with us. Or we actually might see that on the other hand, dogs are not getting exercised as well as they normally would, because those of you who might be outsourcing your dog's exercise, for example, they dog those activities in half in the last week or two. So we might actually see that there is may potentially be an issue in our dog's anxiety, energy levels, etc. Right. So the core purpose of today is we're going to talk about how we're going to actually be able to burn some of the brain energy and brain calories that our dogs may have, so that way we can really help them. Oh, hold on one second. So that we can really help them with being able to be calmer, be able to be more at peace, be able to be more at balance. So let's go ahead and talk about just a couple of the things that we might be seeing occurring. A lot of my clients have called me and asked me particular questions. So one client in particular, her name's Jessica, she called me, texted me yesterday and asked me, she says, Brent, are your dogs okay? Because my dog is reacting very, very differently, right? Now, this is a dog who had been doing training for reactivity issues, and they were able to get it under control for the walks, to be able to pass by skateboards and things of that nature. And what we start seeing is right now, because there's a higher volume of dogs at home, there's also a higher volume of people, we start seeing that this higher concentration of anxiety, people who are home, sometimes our presence with our dogs, they motivate our dogs to behave certain ways, right? So just our dogs may act different when we are present versus when we're not present, and this is a very, very common thing. So we want to show you guys today, give you guys a couple of ideas and open this up for a little bit question and answers of how we could actually go about reducing this anxiety and taking advantage of this extra time that we have with our dogs to actually be productive, right? If you guys are clients of mine, you guys may have been done training, and you guys may have seen very great results. However, part of training has a lot to do with our consistency with our dogs, and even me as a professional dog trainer, I trained Dynamite very, very well when he was really, really young. Sometimes, however, I get busy. Sometimes I'm so busy training other people's dogs that Dynamite barely gets a little bit of my attention, which I'm guilty of and not proud of. But in this particular situation, we've actually spent the last week or two sharpening Dynamite up so that we can, so that he can have more mental stimulation. Okay, so obedience is going to be a great form of mental stimulation. Patience work is going to be a great form of mental stimulation. And I'm bringing this up in particular because those of you who might have working dogs, and a working dog to me is defined as a dog who very smart, but very driven, right? So you might have like that German Shepherd, that Belgian Malinois, that Pitty, that Doberman, like Dynamite. And if this dog has a lot of drive and is also very intelligent, this is a perfect candidate for mental stimulation work and exercises. So let's talk about some of the things that you guys could be really focusing on right now in regards to mental stimulation. All right. If you've done obedience before, I want you guys to ask yourself a question. How long can your dog stay? Right. And if the answer is 30 seconds, please, that's great. Right. Go ahead and comment if you guys can. What's the longest you can get your dog to stay? That'd be great information. I'd love to know that. Now, a lot of times people will claim that their dogs can stay, which they totally can. However, the biggest part of staying is, will my dog stay when there is extensive amounts of distraction, right? So how long will my dog stay? How far away can I be from my dog when he's staying? And then most importantly, around what types of distractions can my dog actually stay? So let's check this out. Let's try something with Dynamite real fast. Dynamite, come here. Where bed? Wrong bed. Wrong bed. Down. Okay. Come on. Go bed. Yeah. Stay. He literally tried to just walk over to this bed and lay on it, which was hilarious. Stay. Okay. Go to bed. Lay down. He wants to lay on this particular bed, which I think is hilarious. So let's try that out, actually. Down. Go to bed. Lay down. There you go. Stay there. Stay. All right. So we're going to talk about staying in general and little things that we can do. Now, stay ultimately has a patience component when we're working with dogs. Okay, let me go ahead and tilt this down so you can see him better. Oops, pull this forward. There we go. Okay, so stay has a patience component, which means the dog has to try and resist his natural desires to go find something to do. The dog has to kind of fight and combat certain things that he's dealing with, like seeking attention, putting his nose into something. And ultimately what happens is this part of the brain that has to problem solve, rationalize, this is what helps tire the dog out. Okay, when I have a super working dog, a lot of times we try and burn out their energy by overstimulating them, right? So a lot of my clients, they'll say, you know, I took the dog out for a mile hike because I needed to burn some of that energy out. And then the next week it's a 2-mile hike, and the next 3 weeks later it's a 3-mile hike. And unfortunately what happens is you still tend to get a very excitable dog with just awesome cardio. And this tends to be what we see happens when all you do is focus on the physical exhaustion of the dog. Now, when we're working with downstays, patience work, I want you guys to kind of keep this this comparison in mind in your head. Okay, you can go to Vegas, right? You can go to Vegas for a whole weekend, and you could be doing a lot of things that you like with your friends. You could be going to the club, you could be drinking, you could be going to the pool. You could literally have a stacked back-to-back schedule. Now, what happens is if you like every single thing that you're doing, naturally what's going to happen is your body is going to get a surge of dopamine. You're going to get a surge of oxytocin, all these great, good feeling chemicals your body's going to get a surge of, which makes you actually enjoy it a little bit more and actually makes you want to do it again, right? And this is how the brain chemistry works. Now, we can party for 2 days in Vegas, and actually one of my clients is from Vegas. What's up, Brittany? How are you? One of my clients, we can party 2 days out of the weekend and not really get a lot of rest, because you're constantly going and you're reinforcing that behavior over and over and over and over. And this is very similar to a dog who is sniffing bushes. This is very similar to a dog who is, chasing squirrels, constantly playing with dogs. This is a dog who is, constantly wanting you to throw the, lay down. Constantly wanting you to throw the ball back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So what this does, unfortunately, is this actually helps stimulate our dog a little bit without exhausting their brain. Okay, so part of what we want to work on is we need to work on patience because it actually helps develop a different part of the dog's brain, which has to do with problem solving and rationality. Okay, so for example, you can party 2 days in Vegas and have a blast with a minimal amount of rest. Okay. However, if you have a hard day at work, you have 4 problems you need to solve. You might have, certain people you might have to deal with, where you constantly have to critically think, rationalize, problem solve, think ahead, think pros and cons. When you have to use that part of your brain, I want you guys to think of how exhausted you are at the end of the day, right? So you might be wanting to take a nap, right? Hi, Bobby, how are you? So you guys might want to take a nap in that scenario, okay? Because a lot of our brain energy has been burned out, and we start seeing that 5 hours at work can tire us out more than 2 days wild in Vegas, okay? So what we want to do is we want to teach you guys the core to mental grounding and teaching our dogs to relax more. And also, how can we adjust and shape the dog's character? How can we adjust and shape the dog's character in a way where we can actually teach the dog to be this way on their own? Okay, and so this has a lot to do with conditioning. Okay, so if you guys notice, Dynamite has just kind of given up. He's just laying down. Now he's off of a leash. I have my verbal commands with him. Is he 100% perfect all the time? No, you guys saw a couple, little bloopers here, but that's not the point. This is a real dog thinking real things, feeling real things with his real owner. So we're going to see a lot of little imperfections, which is totally okay, especially at home with our dogs. Now, okay, so one little bit of homework that I would want to give you guys. Okay, down stays for at least 30 seconds. All right, this is what we're going to try. All right. Now, right now, Dynamite's been in a downstay for about, consistently about 2 minutes. He got up once. But what I want you to do is I want us to think of what kind of thought process is going through Dynamite's head. So let's see. Dynamite, what are you thinking? He's thinking, I'm so sleepy now. My brain hurts. I'm tired. Right? So in essence, this is a relaxed dog, would you say? Okay. Now he's relaxed. It doesn't mean that he can't get up and get excited all of a sudden. However, right now, the reason he's laying down and staying there is because he knows that I require it from him at this time. Right? And so, yes, you could look at this as an obedience command. I look at this as a character development skill. Shh, not that way. I know we're talking about you. I'm Dynamite. All right, so what I'm going to do, he's been down for about three minutes or so. Okay, good boy. And then we're going to go ahead and let him come up. Now, during this downstay process, we start seeing that our dogs, they start developing sometimes some type of anxiety, right? They might fidget a little bit. They might go from side to side. They might be in a stiff stay position where they don't want to relax, pop their butts to their side. This ultimately is the brain work we're talking about, right? Our dog has to constantly combat impulses that they have in their head, right? So if I'm a dog and I'm just laying down, majority of dogs that I see who know how to lay down and stay, they are actually just waiting to get up, right? And if you've taught your dog how to stay for short periods of time, you're going to see that this is the case regularly. Okay. Now that I've released Dynamite, he actually went to go. Oh, I said your name. I did show your name. Go play with your ball. With your ball. Okay. Now that I released him, he's going to entertain himself for the most part. But now he wants human attention. Okay. And sorry, what we're talking about. So the anxiety that we go over, that dogs go through, this is the part that makes them have to learn to either let go of the emotion or rationalize why I should stay in place. Now, for those of you who are working on a downstay, whether it be now or later in the day, you're going to see kind of a transformation process. The longer you hold the dog in the downstay, the more relaxed the dog will become. So, for example, we see Dynamite here right now. This isn't what we call the Sphinx position. This position is the precursor to getting up, as you saw. So let's see. Sit down. Okay. This particular position, he's about to get up. Called the Sphinx. They got it. Okay. Now let's see if we can get him to relax a little bit more. Down. All right. Good boy. Stay. When that butt plops to the side like that, the dog is a little bit more committed into this down stay. So we want to go ahead and try our best to promote this as much as possible. If the dog's butt is plopped to the side and is attentive to the handler, it's a good thing. Is the dog completely let go and relaxed? Not necessarily. Okay. Ultimately, what we're looking for is we're looking for the dog to find a very calming, relaxed position where they put their head on the ground, where they lay on their side, and this now is the relaxation. Now, what is it that you think it keeps the dogs there? Okay, what keeps the dogs there is my expectation. All right. Now, I expect my dog to relax for, certain randomized periods of time. And I've practiced that since the time he was very, very little. So I practiced that when he was really small. I've practiced it when he was a teenager. And right now he's just about to turn 2 on Cinco de Mayo. So 2 more months, he'll be a 2-year-old boy. But the purpose of this is so that we can call upon relaxation. We can call upon calmness at any given time. And the thing that is really keeping him down is 2 things. He's learned through trial and error when he was a baby what happens when he gets up. So just like when I was a kid, if I got up from doing my homework to go watch TV, my parents would put me back in the kitchen and they'd say, do your homework. And the hardest part was the TV was right there by the kitchen, so I could see and do both. And I think they were doing it as a test, but we'll talk about parenting a little later. The point is he wants to get up. There's parts of him that get bored and will try and want to get up. But what happened, my consistency of expecting him to be calm and to relax, this is ultimately what is keeping him here in this position. All right, now, Brent, a lot of you guys might be asking, Brent, I get it, downstays, great. My dog is either really good at it already or he's not that great at it. I want you guys to start in small doses. If your dog is not good at downstays, what I would recommend is to actually put a leash on your dog. Okay, if you guys have leashes on your dog, this way, if the dog breaks the command, you can grab the dog and put him right back in the position where he started. All right. Now, there is a little bit of obedience foundation that you may need to work on to be able to have a very simple follow through like this. However, it is as simple as grabbing the dog by their collar as well. Right. So let's say my dog decides to get up. Okay, Dynamite, good boy. And let's say he broke the command. I would just simply grab his collar and I'd put him in a sit position and I'd say stay. Right. And his job is to stay there. Now, if he broke, okay, boy. Let's say he broke the command. I would just grab him again and put him back in the stay. Now, I want you guys to know that the 2 types of stays are the sit position, which is a very alert and focused stay, or the down position, which is a very relaxed position. This is the one where the dog's going to fall asleep. The dogs will usually not fall asleep or get completely relaxed in a sit stay. So if you guys are looking for long-term stays, I really want you guys to put a focus on this type of work. Okay, but if your dog breaks, grab them. If your dog is a runner or likes to make a game out of you chasing them, I would suggest put a leash on them, grab them, and put them back in the position that they originally started. Okay, so what we would do is we would start with minimum 30 seconds of a stay. All right, how you get that 30 seconds is you constantly put the dog back in the position that they were in repeated amounts of times. Now, you can't say you don't have time anymore because we're all on lockdown. So take advantage of picking these challenges when you know you're actually going to win. Okay, so number 2, what I want you guys to start doing is I want you guys to start moving freely in the household. Right, now your dog might make a mistake, but I want you to go ahead and clean up the room, put some stuff away. Okay, if the dog makes a mistake, remember you're putting the dog right back where they started. But what I'm doing now, by me physically moving around, I'm developing my dog's curiosity. My dog may want to engage with something that I have. It could be a piece of food, a red ball. It could be something that stimulates him. These are things that get him curious. These are things that get him excited. And what we're trying to do really is we're trying to get him to burn some of that problem-solving energy in his brain. Okay. Now, if he's constantly looking and focused at me, this particular body language, the dog is waiting to get up. So already he's been down longer than 30 seconds. But for those of you guys, I want you guys to just focus on 30 seconds. Okay. The reason I say 30 seconds is once you get to a 30-second marker, getting to a minute is a lot easier. And once you get to a minute, getting to 3 minutes, literally making these big quantum leaps higher and higher are so much easier. All right. But the only way our dogs learn to be patient is if they learn two things. If they get up, I will physically put them back to start over. That's how I learned how to stay as a kid. Or the longer they stay, the more rewards they're going to get. Okay, so another option that you have to teach our dogs to stay is physically put them back. That's one side of the coin. And then also on top of that, if your dog is staying, we can actually grab food and give it to them for being such a good dog. Okay, but we're going to say stay when we walk away. Walking away, yada, yada, yada. Good. And we can just give them food. All right, so that would be your first goal. If you already have 30 seconds, go straight for that minute. If you already have the minute, try and go straight for 3 minutes. Okay, but what we're trying to see, we're trying to see the dog's body language relax, plop to the side, and the dog gets super comfortable. Okay, so this would be exercise number 1 for everyone who's at home to practice with their dogs. I would recommend to practice this in 2 different rooms. We're going to talk about different time. Once you've got that 30 seconds to 1 minute to 3 minute stay, we're going to talk about different places you can actually apply this type of stay in the household. Okay. Cool. We're going to come back to a little homework list at the end. The next thing I want to go over with you guys is hobbies and habits, things that the dogs can do while you are home with them. Now, next week, we're going to be going over some more of these tips. But I want everyone's homework this week to just be staying like this. If you can get your dogs to stay for up to 3 minutes, then this opens up a lot of other games like hide and seek with your dog, like go find it, like hold and releases. We're going to talk about all great mental stimulation for your dog over the long term. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the next thing. All right. If your dogs are, okay, Dynamite, okay, yeah, good. If your dogs are active and very food driven, right? What I would recommend for you as a great hobby or habit to develop with your dog is isolated chew time. Okay, now isolated chew time is going to be fun for a bunch of reasons. I'm going to show you just a couple of ways that we can do some isolated chew time. Okay, we have a big thing here of different chew options. All right, let's go over them in a certain order. Okay, how many of you guys have seen one of these? This is called a Kong toy. Okay, now Dynamite likes them, but let's explain this to you guys a little bit in a way that you may or may not be familiar with it. Okay, the Kong toy is a derivative of a bone, actually, right? Back in the 80s, there was a guy who developed a Kong to really just be a bone that the dog can chew on and carry around with him. And you can also stuff it with particular food. Okay, so the Kong by itself, guys, dogs don't intrinsically like the Kong without any training, right? So they might, we see these commercials or we see a lot of people always recommend the Kong. The reality of it is if you want to use the Kong, it's not if the dog likes it, it's you have to train the dog to like it. This is the thing. Okay, now how do we go about training the dogs to like a Kong? It's super duper simple. But before we get into how, I want to give you guys some of the psychology of chewing and training so that way you guys know why this could be super beneficial for certain types of dogs with high drives. Okay, so the way we domesticated dogs, when we were hunters and gatherers, we would actually leave some of our scraps on the outside of our camps. And so then what happened is there were wild wolves. And there was a certain percentage of those wolves that were a little bit more curious, not the best hunters ever. And then what they realized is that they could have a niche if they just went to the edge of our camps and ate the garbage that we had at the edge of our camps, right? So pretty much dogs have been going through our garbage since literally the beginning of domestication, okay? But what they would do is because we would eat a majority of that meat, the dogs, the early wolf that would follow our camps, they would primarily eat bones, ligaments, and flesh that we left behind, right? So if you guys ever wonder, like, why does my dog like rawhide? Why does my dog love, meat? Why does my dog love cartilage on the bones? Why does my dog like chewing on bones? It's because, guys, they literally evolved doing this stuff, All right, so at a very primitive level, dogs like bones, and they like marrow, and they like cartilage, and they like all this stuff that would be found on the carcasses of our body, or of something that's dead's body. So part of what we're doing is we're actually tapping into a very primitive instinct that our dogs might have for chewing. Okay, now bones, the traditional white bone, right? We've all heard that saying, throw your dog a bone. These are great in many, many ways, but nowadays, you know, the culture, we're kind of steering away from them. Always a couple opinions. Some people think we're steering away from bone so that we can sell more Kongs, right? And but we have noticed that there are dogs that can actually get too bone crazy, and they can chip their teeth. And they can hurt themselves. But some of the benefits of real bones is that they actually scale the plaque off the dog's teeth. So you will see that when a dog chews on a bone regularly, that a lot of the plaque on the side of their mouth is actually gone. So this is also a great benefit. Now, when we're looking at bones, the best type of bone to get, so if you see how this bone is kind of the same width all the way through versus this bone, it's skinnier on one end and fatter on the other. What this allows us to do, this allows us to get things stuck inside the actual bone itself. And when we do this, we can actually get a piece of hot dog, a piece of meat, we can jam it in there. So that way it doesn't just fall out and the dog actually has to work for it. Okay, so we talked about the origin of bones. The bone is the original dog toy, right? The Kong is the rubber form of that bone. Now, dogs are going to be more naturally attracted to bones and not to Kongs. So what we have to do, though, doesn't mean that the Kong is bad. It just means that we have to teach the dog to like Kongs. Benefit for having a Kong over a bone is just you will protect the dog's teeth, you'll protect the dog's mouth. That's something really important. Over the long term, especially if your dog has ever had any disease when they were a puppy. So if your dog had parvo or distemper when they were very, very sick, a lot of times that does lead to bad nutrients in the teeth, which means that they're more likely to chip. Okay, so keep these things in mind. How we use them, pretty simple. All of these toys fall under a category called food puzzles. So if I get a Kong like this, it's empty. I always do recommend grab a bigger Kong than you think you need, right? So if someone has a dog this big, they end up getting a Kong this big, super small, right? I would say you want to be able to fit at least half of your dog's food content. Like if you feed your dog a cup, you should be able to put a cup of food inside of your Kong. If you feed your dog 2 cups, I would get the bigger Kong, okay? So the way you do this is really simple. You just grab a Kong and you just stuff it with kibble just like this. Just like that, okay? And so right there, you're gonna see that there's actual kibble inside of the Kong. And this is literally how you start Kong training. It doesn't have to be more complex. We've all heard kind of these stories of like, well, you're supposed to put peanut butter in there, you're supposed to put this in there, you're supposed to put that in there. The reality of it is this. If you guys remember being a kid, this is a food game. What happens if the game is too hard and you're a novice at something? You usually don't keep trying. Right, so the whole goal of teaching the dog the Kong is we want to make the reward process as easy as possible. So by us just simply putting kibble inside of this Kong, we start seeing that the dog's able to get rewarded a lot faster simply just by hitting it around. Right, so for example, let's put this down. Okay. So what we're going to see is the Kong is just like this. If the dog were to hit it, kibble falls out. If he hits it with his head again, kibble falls out. And this is phase 1 of Kong training. So if you guys have a Kong and don't know how to use it or are interested in trying the Kong, this is all I would try all week long, okay? Now check this out. You don't necessarily, when in Kong training, you don't have to use traditional food bowls. You can actually use the Kong as the food bowl, right? And this is the fastest way to train the Kong. Because the dog will now start associating food with the actual Kong itself. All right. I always give people the comparison of a food bowl. If you look, reality of it is a food bowl is just a piece of tin or a piece of ceramic, depending on where you buy it from. However, if you train the dog that this is the vessel that brings you food, you're going to see that 2 weeks into it, you pull out a food bowl and your dog starts going. They're super excited for it, right? So the same thing will happen with the Kong, and this is how we train the Kong to have value, right? Now, once the dog is really good at this, Then what we'll do is we'll actually put soggy kibble inside of here. Then maybe we'll put soggy kibble with peanut butter in here. Maybe we'll put some meat and some jerky and some other stuff in there. Pretty much the tighter you make this Kong, the harder it is for the dog to get the contents out, making it a harder game, which lasts a lot longer. But we can't just go straight to the hard version. We have to build this up little by little so the dog's confidence in Kong training goes higher and higher and higher so that they have the determination to do a lot of the harder Kongs. Make sense? Okay, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I know Dynamite does want that. Sorry, I'm just looking at the comments again. But yeah, if you guys have any comments, feel free to call me, or we could do a live video chat one-on-one, and I can show you exactly how to use this. All right, Peter, I'm not even gonna entertain that comment. Okay, here we go. Other types of chew toys. Well, now, oh, sorry. We can do the same thing with bones, except bones are a little bit more diverse. You can stick meat in there, like actual hot dogs. I know it sounds kind of gross. Dogs really like hot dogs. It's just what it is, people. If you get the cheaper the hot dog, the more they like it. That's kind of how it works. So you can get a bone like this that's narrow on one end and fat on the other one and just pop a hot dog. I like to make the piece of hot dog a little bit shorter so that the dog can't just grab it and pull it out. Right, so that's the way that we could use a bone. You can also get some soggy kibble, pour some water on it, make a mash out of it, and you can stuff that mash inside of the bone. Okay. Now, why is this more beneficial than maybe just giving the dog a real bone from the butcher? Modern days dogs, they don't have necessarily the best stomachs. If you guys know that your dog has proven to you that they have a wonderful stomach, please go ahead and offer them a real marrow bone, because they're totally going to love that. However, in my experience, if a dog has a sensitive stomach and they have marrow for the first time, you're going to be dealing with Hershey squirts and waterfalls for at least a week. So just be careful. So I always like to just use the dog's actual kibble. I make a mash out of it and I'll just shove it in there, and then I'll actually take these bones, stuff them, and put them in the freezer so I have many on rotation. Okay, so this is a great way for our dogs to go and start chewing and falling in love with the toy. Now, why do we do this? We do this so our dogs don't constantly bother us for attention. Just like when we were kids, our parents would say, you know what, you should go play with your toys. That was their nice way of saying, get out of my face. Right? It was a really nice way. Get out of my face. I need my own time. I need my own space right now. Okay, and that is super healthy, especially in this time where the dogs have a lot more face time with you. We want to make sure we keep some healthy distance in the relationship so that way our dogs don't regress in any scenarios. Okay, another type of chew toy. I'm not sponsored by these people, but I really, really dig it. This is called a Busy Buddy Jack toy. Now, the whole Busy Buddy line, they're super creative with toys, but let me kind of just show you guys how this one works so you kind of understand how the brand is. All right, here we go. All right. So if you guys remember Jax when you were a kid, here we go. All right, so this whole thing comes apart. Okay. Give me 1 second, actually, 2 seconds. I'm glad you guys are watching Dynamite because it would have been bad. All right, here we go. So Busy Buddy toys, they come with these meat rings. Now they have a couple different flavors of meat rings. All right. All right. Here we go. So we have a couple different meat rings. They have really fat meat rings that you can put on. They have these skinny meat rings that you can put on. But the whole point is you're kind of making a sandwich of nylon, which is great for dogs chewing. And this is vanilla flavored nylon. And what we do is we put this little green ring, just like that. This is like a little to scrape the dog's teeth. And what we do is we'll stick some meat rings on it. Oops, not that one. Actually, the problem with if you let the dogs chew on the very, very end, it messes up the threads. So the rings don't actually go on right then and there. So just make sure you don't leave this out in pieces. So back off, Dynamite. Back off. Go away. Thank you. Just make sure you don't leave it in pieces. But the idea here is we would put and refresh meat rings on this item all the time. Right. So anytime that we are ready for upgrading the dog's chew time, we go ahead and put this sucker on. It's a lot harder than it looks, guys. It's not supposed to be this hard. There we go. All right. Actually, I think these meat rings are the wrong size for this particular toy. This is the large toy, and I just got the medium rings. So it's not this hard usually. But just for demonstration purposes, we're going to stick it on. And then what we do, you see how there's meat on there? And then we create a little layer. And then what we do is we just go ahead and screw the other end. And we can also put more meat rings here, right? So we can lay it on top of there, and that would be a great toy for Dynamite. All right, now this is what I raised Dynamite on, so he loved this thing. And I really just enjoy this because it allows us to refill the meat, and the dogs just learn to do as they please with it. Get it, boy, piggy. He's gonna take it to his area. It's just what he does. All right, so that's a cool little chew toy that you can develop with your dog. Now the very, very last chew toy, or not chew toy, but food puzzle that I do enjoy is something called a Kong wobbler. Right, it still comes from the Kong company. So you're going to see a huge resemblance between this thing and its big, big brother, this thing. Okay, now very different toys, so I want to explain it to you guys. The Kong wobbler is a buoy, so I can hit it back and forth like a punching bag, right? There, right? And what we do is we actually stick kibble inside of this. Versus this one is something you stuff and the kibble falls out of it. All right, so this can be handed to the dog like a bone. This in particular is something that keeps the dog busy for many, many hours. All right, so the way we do this, the bottom screws off, the top is just like this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to throw kibble in, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and screw just like that. Okay. And what happens is if the dog hits it, just like previous Kong, the food and kibble just comes out. Okay. Let's go ahead and let Dynamite play with this guy. Go ahead, Dynamite. And then we start singing. But you see how he's engaged with it? He's figured out how to take the food out of it. Now, this wasn't an overnight thing, and to be honest, this isn't the first time. He's played with this toy, so he definitely kind of knows how it works. But just like with the original Kong, there are ways of making this particular toy harder. We can put wet kibble in there again. We can put chunks of things that are bigger and harder to get out, so the dog has to work at it a little bit harder. But ultimately, this is another type of food puzzle that we can use to keep our dogs busy. That way they're not worried about getting mental stimulation. All right, we're back. All right, guys, so this was our section on chew toys and how to use them properly during this time, okay? Those of you guys who may, I'll explain kind of what I see as a dog owner, or as a dog owner and as a dog trainer. I tend to see that there is a misunderstanding sometimes that freedom is happiness when it comes to our dogs, right? But what I've noticed is that freedom has also a tendency of giving our dog boredom, and boredom tends to develop very bad behaviors, right? And so people will, a lot of my clients will tell me that, I ask them, I say, how much time do you spend how much time do you spend with your dog? And they go, oh, hours. And I go, okay, but like, how much time do you like spend with your dog? Like, do you actually do stuff with your dog? And when they think about it, they probably, you know, then they admit to me, they go, probably like cumulatively throughout the day, probably like 20 minutes, like 20 minutes of active engagement, 20 minutes of teaching the dog something, 20 minutes of, giving them feedback and letting them know that you're proud of them and loving on them, right? Because for the most part, we misunderstand that quality time with our dogs is not just letting them sit at our feet or sit on the couch or follow us. And so this kind of brings us to like how we walk our dogs outside. Now, those of you who are practicing social distancing, you might not be walking your dogs outside, but sometimes the walk is one of the only intimate times that we have with the dog. So if we allow our dogs to sniff all the bushes and pee on all the trees and look for all the dogs and chase all the squirrels, well, there's a high potential that you could be spending 45 minutes on a walk and the dog's only paying attention to you 30 seconds out of those 45 minutes, right? So just something to kind of keep in mind. Now that we have a lot of this indoor time, I want you guys to think of mental stimulation as giving your dogs problems to solve, giving your dogs rules, giving your dogs structure, because what has to happen is if we provide the rules for our dogs, then they learn to live within those rules and make decisions versus dogs just kind of living in their impulse and living in their feelings, right? And so to really prevent them from getting bored, creating bad habits, taking those habits a step further where they might lead to destruction or reactivity or aggression. We just want to make sure that our dogs have enough to do here. That's something that's self-rewarding. And also we want to make sure that we're spending time with them to be able to teach them the things that are important to us. Because if we don't teach them the things that are important to us, unfortunately what we start seeing that the instincts in their nature will take over, right? Usually a lot of my clients who have dogs with behavioral issues, whether they be a rescue or a puppy, that dog at some time in their life learned that their impulse or their instinct was the right thing to do. So to bark at the mailman was the right thing to do, and it's happened for 2 years. That's why your dog always barks at the mailman. Or to hate every dog that comes by your neighborhood or across your house. Your dog has learned to do that consecutively over and over, which is part of their nature. But if we never teach them the counter of that nature, if we never teach them the human expectation or what to do in our presence, then we actually don't develop mental structure in the dog, right? And just to recap what mental structure is, those of you who are parents or obviously have parents, we know that we can behave a certain way when we're not in their presence, but as soon as we are in their presence, we know we adjust our behavior. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're 31 like me. It doesn't matter if you're 60. If your parents are in the room, you behave very, very different. Okay. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach our dogs what we expect from them, just as our parents did. And that's the only reason we change our behavior in front of our parents and our loved ones, is because we know what their expectations are. A lot of times our dogs don't know what our expectations are, and we tend to punish them for getting it wrong. So during this time that we're together, guys, with our dogs, let's take the time to teach them more. Let's take the time to teach them the importance of something as simple as a downstay for 1 to 2 minutes. And we're going to give you guys some how to elevate those exercises into something fun. But this is where it starts. This is where it starts. If you guys practice this 3 times a day, 4 times a day, try and get those 3 minutes 2 to 3 times a day, you're going to see that your dog's obedience in regards to staying improves tremendously. Okay. So I guess I want to end at least our lecture portion of this. Dynamite, how you feeling? Are you feeling good? I love you. Okay. So I want to end the lecture portion of it, and I want to leave this up to questions and answers. If anyone has any questions that you guys would like me to answer or address right here live on YouTube. We're only going to be here for about another 10 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and call it done. But we will be back next weekend with some follow-up work to this. And again, if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them in the comments of this YouTube channel, of this YouTube live stream, and then I'd love to maybe address those next week or the following week, because I plan on doing this every week as long as we're on lockdown. And if you guys have any personal questions, feel free to call me, text me, and I'm literally stuck in my house forever until this is over. So I'd love to hear from you guys. All right. So I'll go ahead and wait for some questions and answers, or some questions. Let's see. All right, Jeremy. Jeremy, not sure if you're still with us because I'm just seeing this question from earlier. Jeremy asks, he goes, what do we do if our other dog is walking around minding her own business, right? I would say that this is something important to practice with both dogs. If you guys train your dogs as a group, you're going to see the result, like the family rules is mom and dad like all the dogs to relax all at the same time. So that's really important because yeah, especially if you're a multiple dog household, when we're training one dog who we think needs it, let the other dog be the example as well, right? So let the dogs understand that the rules are the same for both of them. So to answer your question, I would actually put Stella in a downstay as well, or put Rhodes in the downstay. Put Rhodes and Stella in the downstay at the same time while you're practicing these 1-minute drills. Release them, reward them heavily, and then if you can go to the 2-minute, 3-minute, 4-minute, then continue, right? Those of you guys in my group classes that are watching, we're going to continue to do that throughout the duration of our group classes when we get back into the real stuff. Okay. Let's see. A topic, good, yeah. How to get dogs to stop barking and throwing themselves at the gate when dogs go by. Well, that is a good question, Bobby. So how we get dogs, it's people ask this, a simple answer for kind of a complex thing, because there is something in behavior, it's called a positive feedback loop. So positive feedback loop means that behavior A leads to behavior B, which leads to behavior A, which leads to behavior B, right? So what we're seeing in barking, behavior A is being out in the yard, right? Being able to roam the perimeter of the yard. Behavior B is barking at dogs when they cross by the property, right? And the barking aspect, what ends up happening is dogs end up walking past your property, which is a reinforcing behavior, right? So what, if you were going to put in English what your dogs are saying, they're pretty much saying, get away from my house, get away from my house, I'm going to eat you, I'm going to eat you, I'm going to eat you if you get into my house, right? And then what happens is the dogs just keep walking with their owners in front of your house, and your dogs go, phew, another threat thwarted. All right, we scared the hell out of that dog. And what happens is just that idea of thinking that I can bark and scare those dogs away is actually what reinforces the behavior. So the behavior of roaming and being territorial is fed by the behavior of barking, lunging, and scaring dogs away. And then this creates the desire to be roaming and territorial some more. And it just creates this loop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So when we see that there's a loop, right, we use this loop on purpose a lot when we're teaching dogs games. Right. So if we're teaching dogs games like fetch, this is a loop we want to create. Go get the ball, bring the ball back, let the ball go, then I'll throw it again. And we see that this loop keeps going. But when we start dealing with behavior or positive feedback loops that happen with bad behaviors, the key to it is we have to break the chain. We have to break the loop, right? So let's see what we can do. One is the dogs are outside roaming a lot, right? So the dogs are outside roaming a lot. That's behavior one. Is there a way, so if you're the type of family that wants your dog to be able to roam the yard and not be territorial, then pretty much what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to figure out a way to deter our dogs from that gate area where they see those dogs going by. Now, you can do this sometimes with a bark collar. You can do this sometimes with invisible fencing. But when you have big, powerful breeds who are dominant and territorial, other than just keeping them inside or keeping them on the back of the house where they can't see the front of the house, that unfortunately would be your only solution without using any other types of tools or device, okay? Or you'd have to live outside with your dogs and tell them consistently, don't bark, don't bark, don't bark, don't bark. But I mean, actually, no, we have the time for it right now if you want to try that, but it's just not something that's going to sustain over a long period of time. Make sense? Okay. So behavior A is letting them roam. So we have to figure out how we can control that or break the cycle. And area B is the barking, right? So behavior B is going to be controlling the barking. So that's bark collar, that's invisible fence. So by controlling one of those two variables, we can then break the chain, the reinforcement chain that's happening with barking. I hope that was helpful. If you need more details on it, please give us a call. Okay, probably a longer topic. Getting dog better at first intros with other dogs. Definitely a different, definitely requires its own video for something like that, because it's kind of like, so what's the key to making friends, right? It's like, is it being nice? Is it being polite? Is it buying a gift? Like, we don't, like, there's so many variables because we're dealing with another creature with their own thought processes and everything. So it's not as easy to do. So yeah, just want to let you know that, but we will go ahead and try to address that. Okay, let's see. My sister, hi Shanti. How do I teach the dogs to respect the kids' authority when they're all stuck together? Ooh, really, really good, Shanti. That's really, really good. All right, so here we go. Respect is one of these interesting things. You as a mom, you totally get it. Respect is something that is developed through little moments, right? So what I always tell her, you know, we'd say just a little bit, Mom, and she'd be like, and she'd put a whole plate of whatever she was making on that plate, and I was expected to finish that whole thing, and I couldn't leave the dinner table till it was finished, right? So that's one expectation that was put on us, right? Another one would be eating your vegetables or brushing your teeth, or another one would be like doing your homework, right? And so there's these little moments, these little windows where we have an expectation and we need to make sure that the learner is fulfilling that expectation. So in this case, it would be the dogs. So for the kids, I would start with something really simple. I would start with having simple expectations. Now, obviously our go-tos are going to be like sits and downs and stuff like that. But what I want you to add, Shanti, to the sits and the downs and the stays is duration and add distraction. Okay. So for example, if you just tell the dog to sit and 2 seconds later give the dog a cookie, that's not necessarily creating respect for the kids. It is just teaching the dogs that this little human gives me food for doing something I already know how to do pretty well, right? So what we want to do is we want to take that expectation, instead of making it such a very small task, we want to make it something greater. I want my dog to stay in a down stay or a sit stay for 30 seconds, right? And if the dog breaks that sit stay and we put the dog back in the sit stay, and you have the kids work on making sure that the dog understands, if you break the sit stay, I'm going to put you right back. Break the sit stay, I'm going to put you right back. Okay. And we're going to do this with frequency. And then when the dog hits that 15-second mark or that 30-second mark, we're going to go ahead and release them, give them lots of treats, and we're going to start making a game out of it. So it's kind of like Simon says, stay for 15 seconds, and then you can go ahead and get rewarded. Now, what we're doing ultimately is we have to also teach the kids to have limits, right? And I think that's always the hardest thing. Obviously, my nieces and nephews, we know them very, very well. They're like boop, 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 like little ducks in a row. And so maybe doing this one dog at a time is going to, or sorry, one kid at a time is going to be easier with one dog at a time. I think this would be the easiest way, because the kids have to kind of learn the motion of how to get the things, how to ask in the right way and how to follow through in the right way. Okay, but to answer your question, how you develop respect, a lot of little asks. We want our dogs to do a lot of little things for us. Now, just remember that when you ask something, that there is some form of duration and patience that has to be involved with it. So whether you tell your dog to come to you, make that dog wait 2 to 3 seconds before you give him the cookie. If you tell that dog to sit, make sure that dog has to stay at least 10 to 15 seconds before you release him and give him the cookie. I want you guys to just elevate and work a little harder on developing your dog's patience and self-control, because this is what develops that part of the brain that's so important. All right, here we go. Rick Dewar, we are about to have our first kid. Congratulations, man. How do we intro our dog to the new baby? Love that question. I love that question. Okay. Downstays again. Telling your dog to be still and stay is going to be such a winner for you guys. All right. Babies are really interesting. There's 6 months of the baby's life where the baby is going to be pretty helpless, right? Constantly carried, put in a crib, fed, all those things. This is the time where your dog gets introduced to your baby. Now, the interesting thing about dogs, they already know you're pregnant. Right? They already know that there's something happening because they smell it on a chemical level. And because they're animals, they're more perceptive to changes like this, right? Humans aren't, but dogs totally are, because the survival of a pack is based on these senses, right? So your dog already knows you're pregnant, already knows, okay? And when the baby comes, the baby's gonna come into the house, and the dog, funny enough, will more likely actually, you know, everyone's always concerned about what the dog's going to do to the baby. I'm actually worried about the dog actually getting too attached to the baby, because this happens regularly. The way pack mentality works is dogs will, at least in domestic settings, dogs will attach themselves to whatever the weakest member of the family is, right? So I've had many stories where, you know, you take a very well-balanced dog owner who has a dog, and all of a sudden they break their leg, right? And for 3 months, they're on crutches, in a wheelchair, whatever it is. And I always get calls, hey, I broke my leg, and now my dog all of a sudden is more protective of the house. Something as simple as that, right? And because it's in the nature of our dogs to want to take care of their pack. So when you bring a baby into the house, you're going to start seeing that your dog's behavior starts becoming a little bit more maternal. You're going to see maybe a little bit more protective. And these are really, really amazing times for us to actually practice structure in the long term. Now, those of you guys, real quick, those of you guys who are joining me right now on the YouTube live, I want you guys to take a look at some of the other videos I have on YouTube, because me and my friend Mariano, another dog trainer friend of mine, we've been doing a podcast for the last month, and we actually have 2 videos on structure. And if you guys are really interested in what type of structure to develop, if you want to see what 2 types of videos on structure, the theories behind structure, and then our top 5 tips of how to actually structure our dogs in the household, you're going to see that downstays and distraction work are actually 2 out of those 5 that we work on. Go ahead and check out the other 3. And I think, Rick, that this would help you a lot in preparation for the baby. Okay, because if we can keep our dogs calm, still, relaxed, confined, and under control when the baby's around, your job is going to be a lot easier, right? If your dog at this moment has a barking problem, I do recommend to work on that barking problem before the baby comes, so that the baby can sleep, right? Because your wife is going to love those small moments when she's actually able to sleep and relax, take a shower, do something for herself. And it's only going to be when that baby's asleep. Okay. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. If you guys have more specific questions, reach out to me. All right. Any more questions, or are we done? Let's see. The only bad thing about no, that seems to be all the questions, guys. Guys, I really appreciate you guys for taking the time out of your day. We're just a little bit over an hour right now, and I appreciate your guys' attendance. Again, if you guys have any other questions, please reach out to me. Yep, he did know she was pregnant, right? Please reach out to me, and if you guys have any subject matter that you think would be helpful for next week's content, please feel free to send it out to us. Text me. Stay safe. Be healthy. Me and Dynamite say bye. Dynamite, come here. Come here, brothers. Bye, Dynamite. Say bye. Bye. He's like, let go of me. Watch for me. Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye, Dynamite. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.